What is something subtle people say that is a red flag to you? I hate this one so much. I dumped an ex over this. We broke up when he said, "But you're so good at it," to try to foist the dishes on me one too many times, and I started screaming at him that the reason I'm good at it is because I've had so much practice from lazy ass shits like him leaving it to me, and if he lifted his own weight around the house he'd be good at it too, and that I sincerely hoped he'd never find another woman who he would leech off. Not my best look, nor the best way to deal with that. But it really grinds my gears to have people try to pull that shit. This is both subtle and not subtle. In the office, it's an attempt to be subtle. I brushed it off more than once. That means you need more practice. I'll recommend training, or maybe that you handle it next cycle as well. At home it's blunt refusal or a reason for divided labor. It's honestly not used negatively at home most of the time. My friend's wife controls his whole life. It is disgusting. I once watched him call and ask permission to spend $3 of his money. They weren't even living together at the time. She doesn't work. She doesn't draw disability. Her excuse for not helping out now that the kid is grown is her disability. I have been allowed to see him for over 2 years now. I finally just gave up on him. It's really sad, because most of his other friends have as well. My uncle had this happen to himself. He was crying to me on his deathbed that he regretted it beyond belief. I beseech you, do not let this person make the same mistake. They do not know what is happening. Behind the doors the wife will twist things beyond reason, but because he is a good and kind person he will listen. I have a friend like this and it's breaking my heart. He has been isolated completely from most of his family and relationships. I always wonder what could I do to help him see out of this mess. Of course he chose this, but I think it's out of ignorance and vulnerability. The best I can do is be patient with him, not judge his decisions, and be happy to see him every once in a while. I think he appreciates it. My wife is a nurse. She has seen countless horrific accidents from motorcycles where people have been crippled, maimed, or outright died. She will not let me have or ride a motorcycle. I am okay with this, even though it doesn't seem like a big deal to me. Simply looking at the statistics of car deaths versus motorcycle deaths is enough to keep me far away from motorcycles. https://www.discadamskutner.com/motorcycle-accident/how do car accidents compare to motorcycle accidents. Then HSA reports that 13 cars out of every 100,000 are involved in a fatal accident. But motorcycles have a fatality rate of 72 per 100,000. Motorcyclists are also at a greater risk of a fatal accident per mile traveled. For every mile traveled, motorcyclists have a risk of a fatal accident that is 35 times higher than a car driver. Yep, someone needs to tell the bikers where I am that t-shirt and tracksuit. Shorts are not what you want to be wearing if you take a slide on some tarmac. It's like people go full on stupid when the sun comes out here. I've seen more people on motorbikes in t-shirts than I have in the right armored gear in the past few weeks. When I rode, the minimum I'd wear is an armored leather jacket, jeans, armored gloves and boots, and a helmet of course. On longer rides those jeans would be swapped out for armored trousers. No matter what the weather, that's what I'd be wearing. For me, riding was not meant to be comfortable. Most of the time you're too hot, cold or wet. You want comfort, get in a car, which is what I did. Similarly, I was with a girl who was always gaslighting, guilt-tripping and manipulating me. She then cheated on me with a previously friend of mine, so I was not upset when I broke up with her because she honestly made me miserable. She was shocked, despite the SHT she pulled, that I didn't show any sympathy for her when breaking up with her. Some women and men need to learn some decency, respect, and that they aren't the center of everyone's universe. I hope that everyone who is in a toxic relationship realizes before I did. Lol, I did this. I really learned how this is actually a bad thing to do and got called out accordingly. Didn't even know I was playing victim until they told me. It's a good lesson to learn. Be genuine. Don't be a lazy coward. Be better lol. I'm lucky they gave me a second chance. Not pulling that shit again. At least I hope I learned my lesson. I did this recently, I'm the bad guy. You didn't do anything wrong. And you just made me realize how bad it is. I thought it was good 'cause I was taking responsibility of the problem. How would you properly apologize to someone? I hate when people say I'm the bad guy. Right, you did nothing wrong. It's literally close to being correct but not exactly correct. They usually want you to respond saying no, you're not the bad guy. I did some wrong things too. It derails the conversation. Now instead of telling them what they did wrong, you're telling them what they did right and what you did wrong. The alternative is to pretend it's exactly correct, that they literally are a bad guy and you did nothing wrong. Now you've set up a straw man for them to attack. When I started my new job, the bubbliest girl who was loved by most of the staff and was also a HR manager would act like this when me and her were totally alone. She would whisper ever so softly to herself, but to me, you get no thanks around here. No one cares. You just wait and watch the knives stabbing when you least expect it. This is something she did on my first day. I said to her, everyone seems lovely and accepting, and she said, well, wait until you get to know them. This was a HR manager. Edit. I've just realized this isn't very subtle. She was just an all-around bubbly person. She could switch between sad and happy at the drop of a hat. She came across as a manipulator or something. Have you ever known someone that you disliked and could not understand why other people liked them? Also, mostly it feels unfair. That's the way it was with her. Even my line manager recommended I go to her for advice if she was not around, and she couldn't praise her enough. I hated being near her. All she did was complain, but it was only to me. I'm quite soft and she probably sensed I wouldn't say anything back. When they disagree with someone, they default to attacking the person's character instead of their actions. We all do this from time to time, but with some people it's every time. The guy who messed up their order is an idiot. Their boss is an evil sociopath. The person on Facebook who expressed a political view that opposes theirs is a degenerate. That new internet work is hopeless. In the end, the final result is that anyone they disagree with for any reason is either an inherently bad person who doesn't really merit listening to. This just sounds like the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error refers to an individual's tendency to attribute another's actions to their character or personality, while attributing their behavior to external situational factors outside of their control. Someone who frequently, in response to you telling them about a bad or inconvenient thing that happened to you, start with, well, what you should have done, or what I would have done, and then argue with your reasonings for not finding their solution helpful. These people tend to be very opinionated and stubborn, even in situations they don't really know anything about. This is especially true if paired with a tendency to always win, have bad losing habits, are generally immature, or have a history of just not knowing what they're talking about but just want to assert themselves in the conversation anyways. That's not nitpicky. If you ask someone's name, assume their answer is what they want to be called. My name is difficult for Asians to pronounce, so when that happens, I also have a nickname that I'll offer, which often makes them quite happy. Likewise, when I hear a name I've never heard before or know I can't pronounce, I'll sometimes ask if they have any nicknames I can use. These things can even be very nice, light icebreakers. I'm a sapiosexual. I've met very few people who are just plain stupid. Everyone is smart in different areas. So to me this just says my initial judgment of someone's intelligence is the one true measure of intelligence, and usually means they will talk down to you until you can prove yourself suitably intelligent in an area they deem reputable. A marker that someone is close-minded, arrogant, and unlikely to take on any new information that doesn't align with their existing views. To me that's far less attractive than someone with dyslexia who misspells simple words when texting. Less a direct statement and more of a behavior, but I find myself becoming less able to hang out with the people I know who seem to have no respect for any type of input I have on a subject, despite me trying to always at least entertain what they're saying for the purpose of the discussion. Even if it's absurd, I'll have something to add, and they'll seem to not even hear what I've said, either ignoring it altogether or immediately dismissing it as incorrect, sometimes even using the same arguments I just said in explaining why what I just said is nonsense, and on the occasion that I actually decide to go through the effort of defending my stance, they usually end it with some dismissive statement like, well, that's your opinion. Yes, that is my opinion, and considering the fact that I have been sitting here listening to and showing respect towards, even if not always supporting, your opinion, I think would justify me in asking for the same basic respect. This turned into a rant, and I'm sorry about that. To put it shortly, I guess I'd say when a person seems to have a lot of difficulty with you disagreeing with them, and never seems to even pretend they are giving your position any real thought beyond no, you're wrong because, then I'd say they aren't your friend, and you should consider no longer trying to be theirs. Using absolutes with someone they barely know. That's the best thing I have ever heard. I never do that. You're the funniest person ever. Insert awkward fake laugh. I met a guy like that and had a bad vibe from moment one. He ended up touching me against my will and being a massive asshole to all of his exes. When I tried to talk to my crying friend at a party while he was with her, he screamed at me like I killed his puppy. Everyone looked over in confusion. All I said was hi, and he immediately broke into a fake laugh like I'm just kidding. I hope his current GF is treated better. I'll never work with him again if I can help it. When they are the victim in all of their stories. I had a colleague who didn't really have any friends outside of work. All of her stories were about how each of her friends had stabbed her in the back at one time or another. She went traveling to Australia with 6 girls and left early because they didn't want to do the things she wanted. It was glaringly obvious that she was the issue but still tried to play the sweet victim. There is another girl from my high school who has gained quite a few followers on social media through sharing her stories of being bullied in school for being bald. No one can remember that ever happening. She was quite popular but had lost touch with her group as you do when you move away for college. Also, she was never bald. Red flags when people enjoy pity. I'm a very motivated person who publishes and writes a lot, has a show, is in a master's program and has a good job. Whenever someone says I wouldn't want to get in the way of your big dreams or mentions it in a certain kind of way, it always comes off as insecure and subtly sarcastic. It's often paired with when you publish your book and become a big hotshot like I haven't already published several things. Edit. Another is do you live alone upon first meeting? I'm a female living abroad. Don't ask questions that put me in a potentially compromising position. After my recent breakup, I'm not trying to be an asshole here seems like a red flag. It was always something scientifically inaccurate that hurt my feelings. Doubting my gender, doubting my mental health issues, doubting the one thing I have known for a decade because I'm making a lot of assumptions lately. Doubt. I'm not trying to be an asshole here except you're invalidating me constantly because I don't fit your existing worldview. You're listening to other people who have never fucking met me instead of my words. I'm not trying to be an asshole here and you're saying that I should listen to any therapist at all because their education trumps my experience in being me. I'm not trying to be an asshole here then stop fucking being one. When they use their seniority in a certain situation, whether they have one more degree than you or they have lived in a certain place, existed in general longer and use that to voice an extremely bigoted opinion and bristle at any pushback. I try to use this example but it makes them matter. Being older than the mayor and living in that town for longer does not mean the mayor defers to you. Man, when they say something like you let me do anything or you allow anything or am I not allowed to do everything by you, it's a serious red flag and means they're users who will dump you from the moment you start mentioning your desires. They're usually emotionally unavailable and only care about their own needs. It happens mostly with older men with baggage who have not 1 ounce of energy left for a woman and just want sex and be left alone. This is why I don't give men sex anymore in the first months no matter what they tell me. Like 90% of these are just cases of projection, people stating they are the exact opposite of what they really are /do/think, and yeah, projection is not an attractive feature regardless of your relationship dynamic. I'd also like to say, insincere and loaded apologies. My roommate will sometimes do shit that I've politely asked her to be more considerate about, like leaving my things dirty without even asking to use them first, and the next time it happens and I bring it up, I get an almost instantaneous "oh sorry" and then silence, which tells me a few things. She apologized so fast because she knew damn well what she did and was prepared for me to react if and when I did. It's not even a real apology. It's a formality. Just forcing out the words with no intent makes me feel like a parent talking to a little kid that doesn't feel bad about the thing they did that affected someone else. If it's a repeated behavior and there has been past incidents raised, "You aren't sorry. You are sorry you got caught." To which I reply, "I don't want to hear you're sorry. I want to see the behavior stop." Incredible that full-grown adults will just sidestep blame and act like saying the word sorry and then not making any changes whatsoever is a valid way to deal with things. Edit. Wanted to add a related quote from BoJack Horseman. I have a boss that uses weird phrases and it's just creepy. For example, a CO worker and I talked to each other about switching shifts and something got lost in the confusion. She then fussed at us about talking about it without her present by using the phrase, "You guys talked about this offline." Like, what? Not talked about this without me, or talked about this off the clock, but offline? She has other phrases like this too, but I can't think of any ATM. No one likes her as a manager. I wish I was so naturally talented at insert skill as you are. No bruh, I didn't magically pick up a guitar one day and start jamming out. I sounded awful for a good long while, and saying I'm good because of my perceived natural ability negates the 1,000s of hours of actual practice I've put in. My only natural ability I consider myself to have is the willingness to try new hobbies and fail repeatedly until I feel I'm skilled enough to call myself decent. Having a "not all who wander are lost" tattoo or bumper sticker, you can assume that person is misusing that Lord of the Rings quote to make themselves feel better about their total inability to give their life direction. Even bigger red flag is that they either A, haven't read literature, or B, have weak reading comprehension skills. I had a partner who would often say, "I only did that because you," something I did or said that was completely irrelevant. She would often blame her bad behavior, like calling me names or refusing to do things that needed to be done, on me and would never, ever own up to mistakes. And when I called her out, she would begin to cry and ask me why I was still with her if I hated her so much. I wish I had noticed much earlier that this was not how relationships were supposed to be, but it was my first one. You learn and you grow. People who talk to me, 21, as if I was a child. I've had this happen at school and work. It seems like they think less of me because I'm kind of quiet. I'm not necessarily shy. I'm not afraid of people. This is just who I am. I'm also not less intelligent than you just because I'm quieter than you. Anyways, I prefer not to talk to these kinds of people. People like this are IMO simple-minded and narcissistic. Trust me/don't you trust me. That's not how it works. You don't just say it and it happens. You have to earn it. It's also something my ex used to use whenever I questioned anything he did to shut me up. He'd get on my case about being cold and not trusting him and how no one else would put up with me, etc. He almost said trust me before he assaulted me. So for me perhaps it's a red flag and a trigger. Luckily I don't think I have to worry about red flags anymore. At least in romantic relationships. I married my best friend 2 days ago and he doesn't have to tell me to trust him. Instead he just, acts trustworthy. Don't you trust me? Title of thread was red flag for me, not the rest of you. And every person that has asked me to trust them fucked me over in the end. But then again, every person I've ever been with eventually has fucked me over whether they said that or not. My life mirrors that PC Wolf Takaya that lived life mostly alone, did relatively well at it, but then when he decided, for reasons no one can figure out, to ditch solitude and strike out looking for others, ended up losing everything for no other reason than he was trusting.